The mansion stood above the city, like something carved out of a dream someone was too afraid to wake from. From the road below, it looked almost unreal, like it didn't belong to the present world at all. The tall gates of black iron opened into a long, winding driveway that curved through rows of perfectly trimmed hedges. White stone statues stood at intervals like silent guards watching over a life, built on wealth and power. Soft golden lights were already beginning to glow even before sunset fully disappeared, making the entire estate feel warm, almost alive. As you moved closer, the details became impossible to ignore. The mansion itself rose in layers of glass, marble, and polished stone. Every window reflected the sky like a mirror. Every wall looked too clean, too perfect, too expensive to be real. Inside, chandeliers hung from ceilings so high they felt endless, scattering light across floors so polished they looked like water. A grand piano sat in one corner of the main hall, untouched but perfectly maintained. Fresh flowers were placed carefully in crystal vases that changed daily. There was a silence inside the mansion that didn't feel empty. It felt controlled, like even sound had been carefully arranged to fit the luxury. This was not just a house. It was an empire disguised as a home, and inside that empire lived a woman who never truly belonged to the world she now called hers. Amara moved through the hallway with slow, quiet steps. She was 26 years old, with deep, dark skin that carried a natural glow under the mansion's warm lighting. Her hair was neatly styled, her face soft but thoughtful, her eyes carrying something people often mistook for gentleness, but was actually resilience. She was not born into wealth. She had not grown up around marble floors or chandeliers or staff who bowed slightly every time she passed, and yet here she was, the wife of one of South Korea's most powerful men. But in that moment, she wasn't thinking about status or luxury or the strange world she had been pulled into years ago. She was thinking about a small boy running barefoot somewhere inside the mansion. "Mommy," a voice echoed down the hallway, followed by quick footsteps. Amara turned just in time to see a little boy rushing toward her with unstoppable energy. His laughter filled the space before he even reached her. She bent slightly, pretending to be surprised. "Where did you come from so fast?" The boy giggled, throwing his small arms around her waist. "You didn't see me." "I didn't," she admitted with a soft laugh, lifting him into her arms. "You're getting faster every day, Daniel." Daniel, her son, her entire world wrapped in one small human being. He rested his head on her shoulder for a moment before pulling back to look at her. "Mommy, are you happy today?" The question was simple, innocent, and yet it made her pause for a fraction of a second longer than she expected. Then she smiled. "Of course I am." Daniel nodded as if satisfied with the answer and wriggled free from her arms, running back down the hallway as if the mansion itself were his playground. Amara watched him go, her smile lingering a little longer than necessary. But when silence returned, so did the thought she had been avoiding all day. Today was supposed to mean something. Today was their anniversary, the day she and her husband had promised to keep sacred no matter how busy life became. She glanced toward the large staircase that led to the upper floor. Then toward the dining hall where staff had been preparing for hours. Everything was ready. Candles arranged perfectly, flowers placed with precision, food prepared by a private chef flown in from another city. Even the lighting had been adjusted to create the perfect atmosphere. Everything was perfect, except the person it was all meant for. Her husband. Kang Min-jae, a man whose name alone could silence entire rooms. At 38, he had built a business empire that stretched across industries: technology, real estate, finance. His decisions influenced markets. His approval opened doors that remained closed to others. People didn't just respect him. They measured their lives against his success. To the world, he was untouchable, controlled, cold, strategic, a man who never made emotional mistakes. But Amara had known a different version of him once, a version that laughed more easily, a version that held her like she was the only thing that mattered, a version that once made her believe love could survive anything. She walked slowly toward the window in the living room. Outside, the city stretched endlessly under the fading light, Cars moved like tiny glowing dots. Skyscrapers reflected the sunset in sharp angles of gold and orange. Beautiful, quiet, distant. Her reflection stared back at her on the glass. A young black woman in a mansion that belonged to someone else's world. She exhaled slowly. Something had been bothering her for weeks now. Not something she could point to directly, just small changes. The way Min-jae stayed out longer. The way his phone always seemed a little more private than before. The way conversations felt shorter. Even when he was physically present. Nothing obvious, nothing she could accuse him of. Just distance. The kind that grows silently. The kind that people only notice when it's already too late. Amara shook the thought away. Not today. Today was their anniversary. Today was supposed to fix everything. At least that's what she wanted to believe. A staff member approached carefully. "Mom, everything is ready in the dining hall." She nodded. "Thank you." The staff member hesitated for a moment, then left. Amara looked back at the hallway again. Daniel was now playing somewhere near the stairs, laughing to himself. She smiled faintly. If nothing else, tonight would be good for him. A complete family dinner, a memory. That was enough. The sun finally disappeared, and night settled over the mansion. Lights outside the estate flickered on one by one, illuminating the grounds like a private kingdom. Inside, the dining hall glowed softly with candlelight. A long table stood perfectly arranged, plates aligned, glasses polished, flowers centered with careful symmetry. Amara had changed into a simple but elegant dress. Nothing overly extravagant, just something she had chosen because she thought her husband might like it. She stood at the end of the table for a moment, adjusting her sleeves. Then she looked at her phone. No message. She refreshed it. Nothing. She tried again, still nothing. Her expression shifted slightly, but she quickly corrected it. Busy. He's busy. That was all. Daniel sat on one of the chairs, swinging his legs. Is Daddy coming now? Amara smiled softly. Yes, he's coming. Really? He promised. Daniel smiled widely, as if that word alone guaranteed everything. Time passed. Minutes stretched. Then hours. The candles slowly burned down. The food remained untouched, but warm. The staff eventually stepped back quietly, leaving only silence behind. Daniel had fallen asleep on one of the couches, his small body curled up under a blanket. Amara sat alone at the table now, still waiting, still checking her phone, still convincing herself that traffic, meetings, or responsibility were the reason for the delay. But deep inside, something was beginning to shift. A quiet unease she could no longer fully ignore. She stood and walked toward the window again. The mansion behind her felt larger now, colder, the silence heavier than before. Then her phone finally vibrated. Her heart reacted instantly. She turned, grabbed it, unlocked it quickly. Her eyes scanned the screen. But the name she expected wasn't there. It was an unknown number. For a moment, she hesitated. Then she opened the message. A single image loaded slowly onto the screen, and the moment it fully appeared, everything inside her went completely still. The moment Amara opened the image, the entire world around her seemed to lose its sound. Her fingers froze on the screen. Her breath stopped halfway in her chest. The candlelight from the dining table flickered behind her, but even that soft glow suddenly felt distant, unreal, like it belonged to another life. On the screen, the image was clear. Too clear. It showed her husband, Kang Min-jae, sitting in a private restaurant room she had never seen before. But he was not alone. Across from him sat a woman, young, beautiful, confident in a way that didn't need permission to exist. Her hair flowed neatly over her shoulders, her posture relaxed, her smile soft. Familiar in a way that made Amara's stomach tighten without explanation. Min-jae was leaning slightly forward in the image, not the cold businessman the world knew. Not the distant husband who barely smiled at home lately. He was different, closer, warmer, almost human in a way Amara had forgotten. The woman's hand was lightly resting near his on the table, not touching, but close enough that the intention was impossible to misunderstand. Amara's lips parted slightly. No sound came out. Behind her, Daniel shifted on the couch in his sleep, unaware of the storm forming in the same room. Amara blinked once, then again, as if the image would change if she looked at it differently. But it didn't. It stayed the same. The unknown number sent another message immediately after. No words, just another photo. This time, Min-jae's hand was clearly visible, holding the woman's hand under the table. Not accidental, not unclear, deliberate. Amara took one step backward, then another. Her back hit the edge of a chair, but she didn't feel it. Her mind was somewhere else entirely. "No," she whispered, barely audible. Her voice cracked on the word. She looked toward the dining table. The candles were still burning. The food was still warm. The decorations were still perfect. An anniversary dinner. Prepared with love. Prepared with hope. Prepared for a man who was not even here. Her phone vibrated again. A third message. This one had text. Unknown number. He's not coming home tonight. Amara stared at the words. Her grip tightened so hard on the phone, her fingers turned pale. Her throat went dry. For a moment, she couldn't think. Couldn't breathe properly. Couldn't understand how a single sentence could feel heavier than the entire mansion she was standing in. She slowly turned her head toward Daniel. Her son was still asleep. Peaceful. Safe. Completely unaware that the foundation of his world was cracking in real time. Amara pressed a hand to her mouth. Her eyes burned, but she refused to let anything fall. Not yet. Not here. Her mind started racing. Maybe it was fake. Maybe someone was trying to provoke her. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. But even as she tried to create excuses, her memory betrayed her. The late nights, the locked phone, the growing distance, the unanswered calls, the sudden business trips, small things, too many small things, all forming something she had refused to see. Her phone vibrated again. This time it was not an image, it was a video. Amara hesitated. Every instinct in her body screamed not to open it. But her finger moved anyway. The video loaded, and instantly, the sound of a restaurant filled her ears. Soft music, gentle laughter, glasses clinking. Then Min-jae's voice, low, warm. A voice she hadn't heard like that in a long time. Amara's eyes widened slightly as she watched him in the video. He was smiling. Not the polite business smile, not the controlled expression he wore in public. This was different, relaxed, comfortable, alive. The woman from the photos was sitting across from him again, closer now. Their conversation was soft, intimate, too intimate. At one point, Min-jae leaned in and said something that made the woman laugh. A real laugh. The kind Amara used to hear years ago. Then the camera angle shifted slightly, and Amara saw it clearly, the way he looked at her. Not like a colleague, not like a stranger, not like a business partner, but like someone who belonged in his world. Something inside Amara finally snapped, but silently. No scream, no collapse, just a quiet internal break, like glass cracking under pressure without shattering yet. The video ended abruptly. The mansion fell into silence again. Even the air felt heavier now. Amara stood still for a long moment. Her hand slowly lowered from her mouth. Her expression changed. Not into anger yet, not into tears yet. Something colder, something sharper, something dangerously calm. Behind her, Daniel shifted again. "Mommy," he murmured in his sleep. That single word pulled her back slightly. She turned towards him slowly, staring at her son for a long time. Then she whispered, almost to herself, "So this is how it starts." She looked back at the phone, unknown number still active. Waiting. Amara's thumb hovered over the screen. Then she typed one message, only 3 words, "Where is he?" And sent it. The reply came instantly. "You already know." Amara's eyes darkened slightly. For the first time that night, she was no longer waiting. She was thinking, and somewhere deep inside the mansion that looked like paradise, something had just begun to change forever. The message stayed on Amara's screen longer than it should have. "You already know." Those 4 words didn't feel like an answer. They felt like a push, like someone standing behind her gently, but deliberately forcing her toward a truth she had been avoiding for too long. Amara slowly lowered her phone. Her fingers were no longer shaking the way they had when she first saw the images. The shock was still there, but it had shifted. It was no longer chaos. It was clarity forming inside pain. She turned slightly toward the dining table. The anniversary setup looked almost insulting now. Candles burning softly, food arranged perfectly, wine already opened, glasses waiting for 2 people who would not sit there tonight. A celebration that had turned into silence. Amara walked slowly toward the table. Each step echoed in her mind louder than in the room. She stopped beside one of the chairs and ran her fingers lightly across the backrest. This was supposed to be his seat. She had imagined him sitting there, smiling, maybe even laughing a little, maybe holding Daniel on his lap while she talked about nothing important at all. A normal night, a family night, a rare peaceful moment inside a life filled with power and pressure. But now, that imagination felt like it belonged to someone else, someone naive, from a different version of her life. Daniel stirred again on the couch. Amara turned immediately. Her expression softened for half a second. She walked over and gently adjusted the blanket around him. His small hand instinctively grabbed her sleeve even in sleep. That simple touch made something tighten inside her chest. No matter what was happening, no matter what she just saw, he was still here, still hers to protect, still innocent in a world he didn't understand. Amara sat beside him for a moment, just watching him breathe, in, out, slow, safe, normal. Her hand brushed his hair gently. Then she whispered without realizing she was speaking, "I won't let you feel this." Silence answered her. Not the mansion silence from earlier. This one felt different, heavier, intentional, like the house itself was listening. After a long moment, Amara stood up. She picked up her phone again. The unknown number was still there, waiting. She typed, "I don't want games. Tell me where my husband is." The reply came slower this time, not instant. Like the person on the other side was thinking then, meet him if you want the truth. A location followed, a restaurant name, a private address. Somewhere in the city she barely visited alone. Amara stared at it. Her thumb hovered over the screen. For a second, she didn't move. Because going there meant something irreversible. It meant stepping out of denial. It meant seeing something she could never unsee. Behind her, the mansion lights flickered softly. The power system adjusted automatically for the night. Everything still worked perfectly. Everything still looked perfect, but nothing felt perfect anymore. Amara exhaled slowly. Then she looked at Daniel one more time, memorizing him in that peaceful state, safe, sleeping, unaware. She bent down and pressed a soft kiss to his forehead. "I'll be back," she whispered, but even as she said it, she wasn't sure if she believed it. She stood up, picked up her purse, and grabbed her phone tightly. Her footsteps moved toward the hallway, each step quieter than the last. The mansion doors loomed ahead, massive, heavy, guarding a world she had once entered as a bride. Now it felt like an exit. She paused for just 1 second at the door, then opened it. The night air hit her face immediately, cold, sharp, real. And as she stepped out of the mansion that once felt like a dream, she didn't know yet that this was the moment everything truly began to break. The car ride was silent. Not the peaceful kind of silence that comes from comfort, but the kind that presses against your ears and makes your own thoughts feel too loud. Amara sat in the back seat, staring through the tinted window as the city moved past her in blurred lights and shadows. Every street felt unfamiliar, even though she had lived in this city for years. Or maybe it wasn't the city that had changed. Maybe it was her. Her phone remained in her hand the entire time. The location from the unknown number was still open on the screen. She had not closed it, not even once, as if looking away would make it disappear. As the car passed intersections and bridges, her mind kept replaying the same images over and over again. Min Jae smiling, Min Jae leaning closer, Min Jae holding another woman's hand like it meant something. Each memory felt heavier the more she repeated it, not because she didn't understand what she saw, but because a part of her had always known something was changing. She just refused to name it. The driver spoke quietly from the front. "Mom, are you sure about this location? It's quite far." Amara didn't look up. "Yes." That was all she said. No explanation, no hesitation, just certainty hiding under calmness. The driver nodded and kept driving. Outside, the city lights became denser, brighter, louder. Tall buildings replaced quiet streets. Then luxury districts replaced ordinary ones, until finally, the SAR slowed down in front of a building that looked nothing like the mansion she came from. It wasn't a palace. It wasn't grand in the same overwhelming way. It was quieter, more private, more hidden. A place designed not for attention, but for secrecy. The driver stopped.
We've arrived.
Amara didn't move immediately. Her hand tightened slightly on her phone. For a moment, she just looked at the entrance. People were coming in and out casually, laughing, talking, living normal lives, unaware of the storm standing just outside. She took a slow breath, then stepped out of the car. The air felt different here, lighter, yet somehow colder. She adjusted her dress slightly and walked forward. Each step closer to the entrance felt like stepping away from the version of herself that still wanted to believe everything was fine. Inside, the restaurant was dimly lit, soft golden lights, quiet music, expensive furniture arranged to create privacy rather than attention. Amara's eyes scanned the room slowly, table by table, face by face. Then she saw him, Kang Min-jae, sitting at a corner table, exactly where the message had implied. Her steps stopped immediately. Time didn't freeze, but it felt like it slowed down just for her. He was leaning slightly forward in conversation, relaxed, focused, completely unaware of her presence. And across from him, the same woman, the same one from the photos, only now she was real. Not an image, not a suspicion, not a question. A reality sitting in front of her husband like she belonged there. Amara didn't speak. She didn't rush forward. She didn't cry. She just stood there, watching, studying, trying to understand something that was no longer confusing, but painful in its clarity. Min-jae laughed softly at something the woman said, a sound Amara hadn't heard directed at her in a long time. It wasn't loud, but it was real. The kind of laughter that doesn't come from obligation. It comes from comfort. The woman leaned slightly closer across the table, and Min-jae didn't pull away. He didn't notice Asamara yet, or maybe. He hadn't looked up at the part of the room where she stood. Amara's heart beat steadily, strangely steady, no panic, no trembling. Just a slow, controlled rhythm that felt unfamiliar to her own body. Then finally, Min-jae lifted his eyes, and the moment he saw her, everything in his expression changed. Not dramatically, not instantly, but enough. Enough for Amara to see the exact moment his reality and her reality collided. The woman noticed too. She turned her head slightly. Confused? Curious. Amara stood still. No words yet. Just silence stretching between three people at a table that had suddenly become the center of something much larger than dinner. Min-jae slowly sat back in his chair. His voice, when it finally came, was low. Amara, just her name, nothing else. But the way he said it carried weight, history, and something that almost sounded like warning. Amara finally took one step forward, then another, until she was close enough for everything to be undeniable. Her voice, when it came, was calm, too calm. I asked you a question. A pause. Then she repeated softly, "Where were you?" Min-jae didn't answer immediately. That silence stretched longer than it should have in a place like this. Not because he didn't hear her, not because he didn't understand, but because he was deciding what version of the truth to use. Amara noticed that. She noticed everything now. The way his fingers rested on the edge of the table instead of moving. The way his shoulders stiffened just slightly. The way the woman across from him suddenly stopped smiling, as if she had finally realized she wasn't part of a normal dinner anymore. Amara's gaze shifted briefly to the woman, then back to her husband. Still calm, still standing, still not breaking. Min-jae finally exhaled. "Amara, why are you here?" It wasn't an answer. It was avoidance disguised as confusion. Amara nodded slowly, like she expected that response. "I asked you a question first." Her voice didn't rise, it didn't shake, but it carried something sharper underneath. Control. Min-jae leaned forward slightly, lowering his voice. "Let's talk outside." That sentence. Simple, careful, controlled. But it did something inside Amara. Not anger. Not yet. Something colder, because it meant he didn't want this seen. Didn't want it heard. Didn't want it witnessed. Amara glanced around the restaurant. Other people were now pretending not to look. But they were looking. Always looking. She turned back to him, no one word. Clean, final. The woman across from Min-jae finally spoke softly. "I think I should leave. Stay," Amara said immediately. Not loud, not aggressive. Just firm enough that the woman stopped moving. Silence dropped again. Min-jae's jaw tightened slightly. "Amara," he said again, slower this time. This is not what you think. That sentence, so familiar, so overused, so predictable. Amara almost smiled. Almost. Instead, she took a step closer to the table. Her eyes didn't leave his. If it's not what I think, she said quietly, then explain it to me in a way that doesn't insult my intelligence. Min-jae looked at her, really looked, for the first time since she arrived, and something in his expression shifted. Not guilt, not panic, something more complicated. Conflict. The kind of conflict that comes from living two lives long enough that they finally collide. Amara noticed that too. She didn't blink. Behind her calm voice, everything she had been holding since the mansion was still there. Daniel asleep on the couch. The anniversary table untouched. The messages, the images, the video, all of it stacked inside her silence like weight she refused to drop in public. Min-jae finally spoke again, quieter. This is not the place. Amara tilted her head slightly, a soft, almost tired gesture. You had dinner here. That landed, not loud, not dramatic, just precise. The woman shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Min-jae glanced at her for a brief second, then back at Amara. Please, he said. Let's go somewhere private. Amara looked at him for a long moment. Then slowly, she pulled out her chair. Not sitting, just moving it. The sound of it scraping slightly against the floor made everyone in the room pause again. She leaned in just a little. Her voice dropped. You didn't come home. Min-jae's eyes flickered, and you didn't call. Another pause. You didn't even send a message. Her gaze hardened slightly. And my son waited for you. That was the first time something truly changed in Min-jae's face. Not the affair, not the woman, not even the confrontation, but that, a child's name entering the space. The woman looked down immediately, suddenly smaller than before. Min-jae's hand moved slightly as if he wanted to reach out, but stopped halfway. Amara noticed that hesitation, and something inside her so settled into place. Not resolution, not forgiveness. Understanding, painful understanding. She straightened up. I didn't come here to fight, she said softly. A pause. I came here to stop lying to myself. Silence again, thicker this time. Then she looked at the woman once more. Not hatred, not rage, just clarity. You can stay, she said calmly. Then back to Min-jae. But I won't. She stepped back from the table. For the first time since she entered, she broke eye contact. Not because she was weaker, but because she was done asking questions that weren't being answered. Her voice came one last time. Enjoy your dinner. Then she turned and walked away. Not fast, not emotional, just steady. Every step echoing like something closing behind her that would not reopen. Min-jae didn't stop her immediately. He just sat there, watching, silent, as Amara walked out of the restaurant and into the night air again. But this time, she wasn't the same woman who had walked in. Sometimes the hardest goodbye isn't walking away. It's realizing you were the only one, still holding on. If Amara's story touched your heart, subscribe and follow her journey. Because some endings are only the beginning of finding yourself again. Subscribe for more stories.